COVID test was negative. It's not going to get anywhere with that attitude. Nee, 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 nee. Do dot, dee, dot, dot, blah, blah. I've had this cold since Saturday is when it started trickling in. So I came home Sunday and I read almost all of my funny books because I was in bed for the last 3 days. I missed work yesterday. And I was like, I'm going to haul myself in today because I'm an American and I don't stay home when I'm sick. You stay home when you're fucking dead. Just a couple weeks. And yeah, I feel like complete shit. Now I got to stay in. I'm going to stay home tomorrow and read some of these funny books. How do you like them apples? First up, Torrent number one. This is by Mark Guggenheim, and I don't know anything else about it beyond that. I've realized this a couple times that I often confused Mark Guggenheim with Mark Gruenwald. So now the way I remember it is that Mark Gruenwald is dead, and Mark Guggenheim is going to be signing at Galaxy of Comics this Saturday. So if you're in the Van Nuys area, swing by. He is a good writer. I think he's mostly a screenwriter, and I couldn't tell you what movies he's written, but he wrote X Men Gold for that entire run. That was like 2015, 2016, something like that. And a handful of other things. A lot of stuff that I have. He wrote Squadron Sinister miniseries for the Secret Wars event in 2014. A couple other things. The Trial of the Punisher. That was him. That was a good one. Um. So yeah, I'm. That's all I got on this one. This is gonna be quick because I'm dying. I need to take my medicine if you follow me. Also, this week I got the Last Barbarians number one. This is written by Brian Haberlin, who is one of the co-creators or sole creator of Witchblade, which was a very popular property from the 90s. There was a TNT television series starring apparently the very troubled Yancey Butler. um, Went right past me. I never much cared for. I never read Witchblade. All of that Top Cow stuff went right past me. In fact, uh, this is on Shadowline. In case you're curious, Image Comics is the publisher, but they have several kind of studios that work under. I don't know how it works exactly. But there's Shadowline, which I believe was started by Jim Valentino of Shadowhawk fame. There's Top Cow, who I think was started by Mark Silvestri, and those are the only relevant ones here, I guess. But I did finally pick up a Brian Haberlin book. He has I've talked about. I think I've talked about it on here. A book called Hell Cop that I really like. So this is a barbarian story, which I've been jonesing for a little bit. What with that barbaric book, and I've always been a big fan of Conan the Barbarian, although still kind of drips and drabs. I tried reading, like I've been reading to my infant son, not every time I'm with him, but I try to read him. I read the first Tarzan book to him, and I'm going to read the rest of them, but I just wanted to jump around. So I tried reading him some of the old Conan stuff by Robert E. Howard, stuff that I had never read. I was more familiar. This has nothing to do with this book, but I was more familiar with the Conan novels that came after Robert E. Howard killed himself. L. Sprague de Camp, I think, was the main guy, and but I have there's a collection, the collected. It's a very cheap Kindle collection of all of the Robert E. Howard stories. I think he only wrote one novel. I'm not even 100% on that, but he had all these short stories that he'd written for Weird Tales, which is where Conan first appeared. And what I didn't know is that the first two stories take place later in Conan's life when he's king of Aquilonia. That's just something I noticed. But trying to read to the baby, he didn't seem to care for it. I know he's only an infant, but I wasn't vibing on it. So I started reading him Sky Coyote by Cage Baker. He seems to be way more into that, even though he didn't read the first book that I'm aware of. Last Barbarian. And finally this week, Icon versus Hardware #1. This is the next wave of Milestone books. Yeah, there's a new Static series started last week, and this is the second Milestone series. And this is a no-brainer. Hardware is my favorite of the Milestone characters. He's the most, I don't know how else to say it, but he's the most vigilante-esque. He's the most Punisher-like, I guess. He's a lot like, well, I mean, it's stupid to draw those kinds of comparisons, but Icon is kind of Milestone Superman, and Hardware is, I would say, like a Punisher slash Iron Man. He doesn't kill necessarily, but he's pissed off. And yes, this will be good. This is written by Reginald Hudlin, and I believe Dennis Cowan did this cover. And Dennis Cowan will also be signing at Galaxy of Comics. I think it was supposed to be. It got moved. It was supposed to be in February, but I think it got moved to March. And I think I told that story, and I showed you guys my question omnibus. I can't imagine I wouldn't have. Dennis Cowan, I'm a huge fan of since I'm a kid, and I'm much closer. Okay, this is what I read last week. How I Became a Shoplifter #1. This was great. This is more like vignettes, a little slice of life, but these kids are exactly my age, so or maybe I'm a little older, but yeah, it was good fun. I mean, I didn't expect it to be like a like an actual how to become a shoplifter, but yeah, it's more of a coming of age story in the '90s when you know Teenage Rebellion was not online. There is one thing about this that bothers me, and it's not something that I'm really gonna hold any creator's feet over the fire for, but they very directly reference the Insane Clown Posse and another band, but they changed the name. That really always has bothered me. I understand that there are trademarks and copyright laws and stuff like that, but for one thing, you think the Insane Clown Posse is really that lawsuit happy? I mean, maybe they are for all I know. Same with Smash. They use Smash Mouth because again, this is the '90s, isn't it? And that just bothers me. And I like I say, I understand that there is a distinct possibility of any kind of legal action being taken if you're using a copyright or a trademark. But I've often been of the mind that, first of all, doing that will just pull me right out of a story. The whole point of being immersed in a story is so that you kind of forget, you don't really, but you kind of forget that it's a fiction until some fucking contrivance like that pops up, and then you're like, oh, right. It's the same whenever I hear it now, whenever I hear 555 used as a prefix for a phone number in a movie or television show. Come on, man. You're still doing that? Um, you just know it's fake, and that's no good. I think it's second of all, I think it's better to beg forgiveness than to ask permission. I don't know why that became such a thing. Maybe I'm too punk for that sort of thing. And again, I'm not really holding these guys' feet over the fire for doing that because even having to, if they got sued, even if they were like, oh, we submit, they'd still have to pay a lawyer to say that for them. I understand that. But that's the other thing. When I was, wait, this is about, I want to say about 13 years ago, I wrote a short story called The New Walmart. And I was like kind of in this online community of crime fiction writers. And we would often somebody would come up with like, "Hey, write a story about this," or write a story using this Eurythmics song, which I also did, and they were fun because it was kind of like a springboard. And that was they. One of them was to do a story about Walmart. The website People of Walmart was popular at the time. Another one of those. Hey, look at these white trash dickheads. Um, remember how mean the internet was? It's so much different now. Um, so I wrote this story called The New Walmart, and I ended up not really intending to, but I ended up putting a lot of really personal stuff in there. I mean, it was a pretty short story, and the events in the short story do not actually have never actually happened to my knowledge, but the characters and the setting were all based on people I knew and places a place I lived. The new Walmart was in my old the Walmart in El Cajon, the Lakeside, technically Walmart, right off Camino, Canada. If you're familiar with that area, right off the eight. Um, when I was a kid, it was just wilderness, some hills, and then they built a Walmart there. And even though, you know, it had been built in the mid '90s, I still called it the new Walmart. Anyway, so the the stories were all popular enough that one or two of the writers were like, well, "Why don't we do this?" I think actually, yeah, this one agent that a few of us knew. Yeah, that was it. A few of these guys. I mean, I can only kind of remember, but even if I remember the names, I don't want to say them. They pitched it to an agent that we all kind of knew, or that I knew anyway, and she said, "Yeah, for sure, let's do this as an anthology of Walmart noir, basically." And I was like, "Fuck yeah, I would love to be in a." I mean, at that point, I had not been published in a in paper and ink or whatever the fuck. Man, I am so sick. Long story short, they wanted to change everything to Megamart, and they sent out an email to that effect, and it said in the email, "If you don't respond, we'll just assume that means you're cool with it." And I almost missed it because I had been in Hawaii at my sister's wedding, and I didn't have a cell phone at the time, so I wasn't or a smartphone, certainly not. I wasn't checking my email. I was only gone for 2 days, but I immediately was like, "Oh no, I don't want to do that." And I didn't want to be an asshole about it or anything, but I was just like, I wrote that story about it's called the fucking new Walmart, and I understand that if we change it to Megamart, no one's gonna mistake that for anything else, and it won't get us sued. But who the fuck is paying attention? Now the Waltons, Walmart, I'm sure is a lot more litigious than Insane Clown Posse or Smash Mouth. Although I think Smash Mouth's got problems of their own at this point. Um, so fair enough, but I still felt like, I mean, it was such a tiny little small press sort of thing. Like, who fucking cares? You think Walmart's really gonna come at us that hard? I said, all right. I mean, I get it, but I was like, I don't want to change my story at all. And I think I rubbed some of the people the wrong way, like I was being a big pain in the ass or something like that. But I mean, I was like, well, I wasn't gonna get fucking paid for it anyway, so like, I'm not gonna. That was the other thing too. It was like a lot of that writing back then that I did back then was for free, which at the time was I didn't give a shit. But in hindsight, I'm like, man, I wouldn't even fucking ask me a question like that for no money at all, so that Walmart can keep. Oh, yeah, go fuck yourself. That wasn't really my point. Really was though that when it comes to things like that, I'm very much a punk rock guy and underground and whatever else, and I just assume nobody's paying attention because certainly no one has paid any attention to anything I've done thus far. Whatever. No, also heroin. Wanted to make this short and I went off on a rant. This was good fun. This is very slasher movie fun, which, given where monsters lie Dwell, Sleep, whatever the Starks and Kowalski book I talked about last week. It's a similar vein, but the Harrower here is like kind of an urban legend, but it's immediately clear that it's not really an urban legend. And so the smart ass teenagers who think they know everything, it's good stuff though. It's been a while since I've read Justin Jordan, so I'm glad to have him back. This is another thing. I mean, I've read a bunch of stuff. For whatever reason, this is the only additional book I sent aside. This is Sins of Sinister #1. So Kieran Gillen, I will try to make this a little bit shorter. Kieran Gillen, who recently wrote the Judgment Day event for Marvel Comics, that's done now. He's gotten back to Mr. Sinister, which is his absolute favorite character. There's no doubt in my mind. He wrote the Uncanny X-Men back in 2010, I want to say, and he used Sinister a lot, and he really changed the character quite a bit. I don't know if I know I know I wrote about this in the email that I do for the comic book store, but Mr. Sinister was created by Chris Claremont. I'm relatively certain, and I'm definitely convinced that Chris Claremont created Mr. Sinister to be kind of an avatar for Chris Claremont. This is largely speculation, but it's informed speculation. And it's just like, because he just was messing with hot redheads, and that seemed to be something Chris Claremont was into. Gillen made him into more of a dandy fop type, but really exquisitely unlikable. And Gillen being an Englishman too, I think he really. I mean, I'm not even sure that Sinister is British, although he's created by Chris Claremont. But yeah. So there's been in Gillen is currently writing Immortal X Men, which is an X title that I enjoy, and he brought Sinister back into that, and so now they're doing kind of an event where Sinister has manipulated time and he's manipulated genetics to where he pretty much rules Krakoa and he's taking over the world. So this starts like at the starting point now, and then there's three minis. There's Storm and the Brotherhood of Mutants. There's Night Crawlers, and there's a third one that I can't remember now. But the next ones are going to take place 10 years from now, and then 100 years from now, and then 1,000 years from now. I think that's how it's going to work. So it's kind of like an Age of Apocalypse or Age of X-Men they did a few years ago, where it's an alternate future where a villain has taken over. And honestly, it's always super fun. I've never actually read the original Age of Apocalypse, but Age of X I really liked, even though that didn't make much of a, it's kind of a thud. I liked it, but what do I know? Okay, I need to go lie down. Thank you for stopping by. Have a nice day.